Welcome back to the Produce Industry Podcast, guys. Today, I've got a great guest, Jay Doan. I went to see him in North Dakota. He is a rancher out there, a rancher and an entrepreneur. We'll call him an agripreneur because I like that term. He's doing so many things that are important and impactful in agriculture. And we wanted to touch more on the differences and the similarities between ranching and farming. You know, this is the farm kid here. You know, this is my background is farming and row cropping and vegetable production. And Jay on his end is doing animal agriculture. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Shay, appreciate you having me.
I'm glad to have you. It was really enjoyable having you or you having me at your place and being able to see what you do and see what you've done as a family and as a business. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have, because our dialogue and the information we were able to share with each other, to me, I came back a more educated and capable person. And I hope that, you know, there was some reciprocated information that you know, happened in the course of our conversation and in the videos and the things that we were doing together. Jay was one of the people that we met the entire trip that we took out there for North Dakota. We saw Peter from Dakota Specialty Milling. That was really cool for me to see something on the milling side. I mean, like flour, just things that I've never seen. Like we grow wheat, but we don't ever see what the finished product is. We're vertically integrated with our onions. We're not really with anything else. So that was really neat seeing what they're doing, you know, with wheat there. We got to see Carl and Julie Peterson from Peterson Farm Seed. That was cool as well to see, you know, the innovation and the way that they've found a niche in North Dakota, providing and producing specialty seeds for producers and breeders all over the world. Sam Fisher and Kevin Biffert of 701X, that was really cool. That's the ear tags. I think you and I spoke about that, Jay, right? You know that product. I thought it was
neat. For sure. You know,
not being an animal, you know, ag guy, not being around, you know, beef cattle or anything like that. To me, it was just a little outside, obviously, of my expertise or understanding, but I could see the value behind it as I had that conversation with them. I did a combine ride out there with Clark Coleman. Canola, never seen or tasted canola in my entire life, at least not as a seed. I guess I've had canola oil many, many times. That was neat to do that as well. Then we met with that
guy.
Yeah, I've done some podcasts with that. So John Purinton, Dakota Ag Synergy. So they're basically seed traders, but mostly it was around sunflowers and, you know, other seed crops like that. It was neat. It was neat to see what they were trading. And then lastly, we went with Kevin Sensala from the value-added part of business development for North Dakota, and it was cool to have a conversation with him. So as we make the comparison between farmers and ranchers, I want Jay to take a moment and introduce himself to you, give you a bit about his background, about his ranch, about his generations of farming and ranching where he is today. Jay, tell us about yourself.
Well, Shay, I appreciate you having me on the show. My name is Jay Doan. I come from my Blackleg Ranch here in North Dakota, rural North Dakota. We've been here since 1882, but my family's been here since 1629. I'm the 13th generation in this country. So long lineage here in the United States, multifaceted. We have stacked enterprises here on the ranch, but we do run cattle, bison. We have a brewery right on site, right through those big doors. We run a lot of events, weddings, and a hunting outfit. So multifaceted, but one of the biggest challenges is working with family. Any one of my family members will be the first to admit it. I have two other brothers, and my dad is still involved in the operation. So I'm the fifth generation, along with my two brothers, but we're making a go at it and having a lot of fun as we continue on. Challenges and opportunities here on our small ranch here in North Dakota. And if anybody doesn't know, we're right next to Canada. So on the map, we're kind of in the middle. I know a lot of people really haven't heard of North Dakota or know even where the hell it's at. But
well, I appreciate you taking the time to be on here, and I can attest to those challenges and opportunities that come from a family operation. But it's also, I think, what makes it rewarding too. Thinking generationally, thinking long term, and just fighting the good fight.
The lifestyle's great. Being in agriculture, actually being on the land. and seeing the reward, what Mother Earth is providing is such a great thing for us. And I mean, I don't mean that in everybody's rewarded in the businesses that they are, I feel, but working with Mother Earth is one of the greatest rewards there can be. So
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, there's so much out of your control, so much that you're doing, and when you rely on Mother Earth to provide, I mean, you do the best you can, but I always say, it's the 80-20 rule when it comes to that, right? We put in 80% of the effort from our end, but we only get 20% of the result, because the result really of what we get comes from Mother Nature at the end of the day. Your state is cool in that I don't know if I want to be in a place that's as cold as where you live, but from a pro-ag location, there's some states that are really pro-ag. They really appreciate what people are doing in agriculture, and they see it as a contribution to their economy. And then there's other places like Oregon, where, all you're doing is destroying the land and the environment, and they don't really even want you. So I thought it was cool to see the support that that North Dakota as a state and as an organization, if you want to put it that way, was, supportive of the kind of things that you do. So,
North Dakota in general. Well, let me back you.
Uh-huh.
You're talking about farm guys, you're talking about ranch guys. It depends on what region you're in, for sure. We consider ourselves ranchers, but we have close relatives that 10 miles away. They're farm guys, even though they have cattle and crops, and we have cattle and crops. You go into the UK, over in Europe, there are no ranches over there, even if they have cattle. They're all farms.
They're all farms.
So when I was growing up, I sat in the old 666 International tractor with an open cab, no air conditioning, no radio, just dirt blown in from the neighbors' pastures into my face or whatever. And that ruined me. I love animals, so I don't really consider myself a dirt guy. Now, I'm going to be a bit hypocritical because I'm going to talk quite a bit on good biology, great, how beneficial the grasslands and how soil is to our ecosystem. So as the older I get, I guess I'm probably starting to shed more back into the dirt side, but I'm true and true animal lover.
Right. And if we talk about farming and ranching, to you, a lot of that is the reason you're more focused on the soil is because the soil is having such an impact on the quality of the beef that you're growing, right? I mean, you're really trying to focus on that differently. Let's talk for just a second. I just want to clarify, because there's going to be some confusion here. You clarified or talked about, farmers and ranchers. Like when I visit the people in California, everyone's a rancher. It's kind of the opposite. You talk about the UK, everyone's a farmer. If you go to California, it's Ranch 21 or it's Harris Ranch, to use, a company that, now those guys do both actually. But everything that they have, if you do an audit on your farm, so we have our food safety audits, for example. For us, it's a farm audit. For them, it's a ranch audit. The terminology goes clear back for those guys to when the Spaniards were there, right? And ranchero, right? The ranch is a farm or a ranch. It's kind of synonymous. So it goes back to to linguistics to a certain point. But that's definitely the way that it is. In your part of the world, though, there's a definite distinction. In my part of the world, there's a definite distinction between farmer and rancher.
Yeah. But you can be both. I mean, I'm not one.
You're not offended.
I love agriculture.
Calls himself a rancher.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Well, we don't like to say the F word around these parts on this place, anyhow. So we do consider ourselves ranchers. We're not farmers, but we do both.
Okay, so from 30,000 feet, Jay, what are the biggest differences that you see between farmers and ranchers?
There's a disconnect, honestly. I feel that policy, community farmers or farmers specifically have this coalition and they're all on one team fighting for the same goal, in my opinion. Ranchers, you have, two main kind of operations or agencies or groups, call it. You have RCAF, and then you have the stockmen, completely different ideologies. And even from ranchers to ranchers, if we're fighting for policy for what we care about, none of us are really on the same page. So that's the biggest unfortunate, future for animal agriculture is that we can't seem to get on the same page when the farmers, the crop guys, are all pulling for kind of the same direction, and that hurts us guys.
And you really mean politically, right? You really mean politically.
More political.
Absolutely.
Yeah, politically.
I mean, I really couldn't agree with you. I completely agree with you. We wondered when we started this conversation right before we hit the record button whether we'd agree on everything. We certainly aren't going to. But when I look at, we have the same challenges in vegetable production. Now, you may not think of that, but like as an onion guy, we don't do a good job representing ourselves, right? There's only 100 of us, probably 150 of us that are grower, packer, shippers that do what we do. There's 150 of us that are growing an onion, putting it in a bag and delivering it to a grocery store or a restaurant, 150 of us. And so to get us all on the same page, you imagine, I mean, there's a lot of ranchers out there. Imagine if there were only 150 of you, how challenged that would be. You think it would be easier, but we all get this, and I know enough ranchers to know that you guys are stinking independent and stubborn and have a hard time working together because you wonder if you're helping that guy too much, right? You're giving somebody a leg up on you when you really don't want to do that. Is that fair?
Yeah. Well, and for us, I don't know, ranching, I don't see any of us as competition for each other. Mostly, unless we're end consumer driven to where we're going to be selling and building a brand. Okay, then you can probably start to see some division. And I mean, which is a good thing. I mean, this is America, let's be competitive. Because when you are competitive, that's when you start bringing up your quality better and better. You see the other guy doing better things. I mean, that's the competitive nature of business in general. Now, if you're just selling to, straight commodities, going to the sale barn, and that's where you're just given a price then by the sales barn or what the price dictates, well, then ranchers are ranchers. You're raising a product, and you're going to get what you get when you sell them in the fall, and that's just it. So I don't foresee. Now we are in the end consumer game, but or the direct to consumer. I want to help as many of the animal guys as possible, or even the farm guys, for that matter. We need to, and COVID, honestly, good or bad, it actually helped people just be aware, and that's all I ask for. I don't care. And when you're talking about putting nutrients in your body, I don't care what you eat. Eat dirt, eat tofu, eat whatever you want. I don't care. If you want to eat lab-grown beef, oh, God, careful what I say.
I was going to ask you that question, actually. So go ahead, and then I'll ask my question surrounding that.
Yeah. So it's lab-grown protein, I guess, for that matter. 50 ingredients, versus 1 ingredient beef. If you want to eat that, as long as you're not corporately deceived, either by corporations or by the government, as long as you're not deceived in general, eat what you want, as long as you're educated and enlightened by it. But what I don't like is the corporate deception and the marketing on top of it. If you get an average consumer coming from downtown Chicago and they walk into a store and they're like, you know what, I see 2 products. They both look the exact same. One has a picture of a cow with a beautiful grass background and has a barn and it says clean meat and it's good for you. It's healthy and vitamins and minerals and everything packed inside of it. The other one just says beef. And this is 1 ingredient and no big marketing campaign.
Right.
What's the average consumer going to go to? They're going to say, you know what, this is clean meat. Thought process is I'm going to pick this one. Well, that's a lab grown, just 50 different things inside of it that probably aren't good for you.
Right. I really think
the beef.
I really think the GMO, like the idea of the concern that the consumer has over GMO. Okay, so they don't want GMO, whatever, whether it's by the way, there's no vegetables that are GMO that you can actually consume. I just want to put that caveat out there so everyone knows. But if it's corn or soy, whatever it is, okay. I'm not speaking to whether you should consume that or not, but there's a lot of fear behind genetically modified, crops, things that people are going to consume. But at the same time, those same people that are afraid of that, I think it's such a weird dichotomy that they are, a lot of them are pro lab meat. And I'm like, wait a minute, you don't want to consume, a crop that's genetically modified. Let's say it's the one produce item that's out there, a papaya. You don't want a genetically modified papaya. There's an apple, by the way, too. So the genetically modified apple. So you don't want those, but you'll take the lab meat. I don't know how those things square.
And I do feel like, going back to how you were raised or how you were brought up, and either you you call it mass media, you call it even the government, the FDA, the USDA. I mean, I just saw a thing that came out that 4 of the cough medicines for 48 years, actually, they didn't work. Why did it take 48 years for the government to say, all of a sudden come out and say, you know what, NyQuil's not good for you? It never has been.
Well, you
and I'm
spoke
getting
to it a
off
minute ago,
topic here.
but you spoke to it a minute ago. It is the cohesion and the ability for people, regardless of the industry, to work together, right?
Yeah.
I've spent enough time, unfortunately, in Washington to see how things work. And it's not the common sense. Although I think this is changing. We're gonna talk about this, but it's been about who has the best way of marketing and promoting. Like a great example of this is we've had. Did you notice the onions in the recall? Have you noticed that? Have you seen that at all? Has it made the news there?
The whole McDonald's.
Yeah, the whole McDonald's thing. So we find ourselves in a spot where it's easy to point at onions for multiple reasons. One, they do this plot graph, right? Well, who doesn't eat onions and eat them multiple times a day? So we had about 71 people that were sickened with onions, right? There's no definitive proof of that at all. But there's they can't find it. That's frustrating for us as onion farmers because they have never. There's been 4 recalls. It's been making national news. It's like people are talking about how onions grown in the U.S. are dangerous. But the people who can really get behind things and go argue with the USDA or the CDC or the FDA are the ones who aren't part of these recalls. So the fact that we don't operate as a group and fight back means that we are more easily named. And we're talking about, and I have to put this qualifier out there, we're talking about 71 people across close to 2 billion servings. So you try and figure out how many zeros that is. Like it's essentially zero. Now I understand those are humans and that it got sick and it impacted their life, but it's super, super low. And I don't know, and I say this to everyone, and I don't mean to digress back into onion farming, but that's what we're going to talk about, ranching and farming. I don't know what else to do to reduce the risk of what people eat. If 70 people out of a billion, if we're looking at servings, got sick, I don't know how to do any better than that. That's the frustrating and the scary part. I don't know what other practices we can put into place or what other steps we can do to mitigate the risk. We still grow the food in a field. It's still grown in the open. There's still some risk. We can't remove all the risk. You have car insurance and so does everyone else because either someone's going to screw up and run into you or you're going to screw up and run into somebody else. And so you carry insurance so that when you make a mistake, there's some help in covering the financial losses. When it comes to onion farming in these situations like this, when there's a recall, there's essentially zero protection. What you lose, whether you're in business or not, and frankly, a year later, is really, really a valid question, and there's not anything you can do. And so I look at the industry and what we do and what's asked of us from the government. I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I just straight up don't know what else to do.
Well, you got to be very careful about herd mentality. When you get something out there that says eggs are bad for you, cholesterol, onions are bad for you, because such a small percentage it affected. Now everybody's going to believe, well, it's just they're bad for you or whatever. And that's really what you got to be careful about. Now you can go back to, in the United States, we do a tremendous job on quality control. I say we raise the best animals. We grow the best produce. So in farming and ranching, and same in business, we have the best workers here in the United States to an extent, and we can get into workers and the new generation and who's willing to put in a hard day's work. That's a different topic, but I know you deal with a lot of H-2As and different visa workers. But you talk about how these people want to change climate, the CO2 emissions and all of that, but yet these other countries are just consuming our atmosphere with all these poor things. And this is why I'm excited for the next probably 12 years at least of what's going to happen, but the next 4 for sure.
Yeah, the next 12 would be incredible. So, what you're alluding to obviously is the new administration come in, President-elect Trump with but you're probably more referring to RFK than you are anything else with Robert F. Kennedy, or where are you feeling like the biggest impact is going to happen?
Well, it depends on which avenue. Now, if you're talking about health, yes, RFK, stud. That guy is going to do wonders. Just for so long, we have the sickest kids right now globally. I mean, we are just poisoning them with things that are banned and outlawed in other countries. And yet we've allowed corporate deception and corporate lobbying to come in and just say, hey, we are more concerned with profitability over our kids' health. And that is a sad, sad thing. The school system, similarly, the USDA just allowing this disgusting things in our kids' food and meals. That's what RFK is. He's like, I'm on board. I am going to start axing people figuratively, and agencies. Just get rid of them. Get rid of them. Let's start over. Level playing field, more into regenerative agriculture, I feel. I know Trump's appointee, Joel Salatin, that's going to be a huge advisor to the Secretary of Agriculture. He comes from a regenerative ag background. I mean, there's going to be some great changes. So yes, that's what I'm excited about when you're talking about health and food in general. More simple, singular ingredients, not a complex hundreds, thousands ingredients in your food. You shouldn't be eating this stuff. Highly ultra processed food.
Yeah,
horrible
I mean, there's so many things, and I look forward to, I think I sit here, and if you look at ag as a whole, it's going to be painful for a while.
Any change is painful.
Any change is painful. Honestly, it's necessary. I agree. Go ahead. But I mean, that's
try working out. Try starting. We don't work out a lot here on the ranch. We don't have time, but we're just physically demanded. But when you either start a diet or you start a workout, it is going to be tough. When you change the mentality or the culture of a place, that is tough. Self-discipline. Just hang in there, guys. I get it. It's too easy to put your hand out and just say, hey, take care of us. Take care of me. But then you start, regressing. If you are getting enabled and taken care of, then you start losing your independence and your freedoms. And so just be careful with that. Have some self-discipline. So this food thing is going to be a challenge because we have been mentally obsessed with these highly processed, highly what am I trying to say here? They're addictive, highly addictive
okay.
Food.
Yeah,
that is horrible. So when you're addicted to something like a Doritos that has the worst things, or Skittles, probably one of the worst products out there.
Yeah. I look at that. I mean, I would say, well, I'm not, but as a sugar producer, right? There's one of those things, and I look at the sugar industry, what that's going to do. One, I look also at corn and canola, or the wheat crops. What's happening in the center of the United States? There has to be something. I mean, I don't think, and it'd be interesting to see your point on this. Do we produce then too much? I mean, there's a ton of ag production there, and I mean farm production commodities. We have to replace those commodities with something else. Or what is that replacement? Is that going back to native grasses and doing more ranching? Because you can only do so much of that too, right? I mean, I think you're going to have this rebalancing of everything, and in the interim, if that's the answer, I'm not saying that is, but I want your opinion on it. But if you're like, okay, grain guys in the Midwest, you've got 40,000 acres, and basically we're going to remove the subsidies and make it so corn and soy isn't valuable anymore. Those guys have to pivot to something, and what are they going to pivot to, and how do we get that to a place where it balances?
I'm all for upcycling spent products. Products that are either wasted. All right, let's find a purpose for it, if there is a purpose. But when it comes to the point where you're like, well, we can just put it in human consumption. I don't know what your take is on seed oils, canola, vegetable oil, using that in cooking. And if you know the background on that.
Yeah, plenty of challenges surrounding that.
And this goes back to, let me start over, the food pyramid. And I think you and I talked about this when you're up here at the ranch. That thing should be turned on its ass. Animal consumption, if you're eating chickens these days, these chickens are slaughtered at 8 months, right? And they're sick birds to begin with. They're fed grains, in my opinion. They're just sick. that protein, it's protein. Don't get me wrong. It's protein. You're going to see, okay, here, where are your protein levels, blah, blah, blah. But as far as the nutrients inside that protein, that's where you're missing out on. If these birds were actually out there grazing, free grazing on the insects and the grasses, the things that are actually healthy for those birds, then you can consume that protein as a healthy protein and have all those nutrients go into your body versus, well, let me eat a sick animal. And that's how I truly feel. We get back to the grasslands that you mentioned. There is a desertification that's going on. The grasslands of North America are the rainforests that are happening in South America, and people need to wake up before it's all gone. We are deteriorating all the grasslands in the United States. Not all of it, but at an astronomical rate. And so we need to wake up, preserve those grasslands. And I don't say take this grass and just leave it, like programs like CRP. Right. That's great in theory. Let's take a piece of property, let's just leave it alone. And that's what's happening in the national parks. You are starting to see desertification of these national parks because you've taken away the nomadic bison that roam the land. You have to hay it, burn it, or graze
in there. Yeah, like the natural the natural order of things is no longer. So we still have to manage it. What I find it interesting because the guys, you guys on the ranching side, play devil's advocate here. You guys have the ability to say, hey, well, what we're doing is good and it's what's missing, right? And I'm not even saying there's truth to that. Absolutely. But then I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, what about, the entire balance? Like, you're not replacing a cow's not the same as a bison. In your case, you've actually got bison roaming your land. So you've got the
sure.
essentially the exact same, animal on the land. But I think it's very complicated and difficult for us to come from a place where we understand the entire picture, right? We just don't understand the entire process. And I'm not saying, again, I'm validating. I agree with what you're saying in many ways, but I think we sometimes make an assumption that we understand more than we do. Like, we really just, it's unbelievable how little we understand. When they did the food pyramid, now I do think there was plenty of corporate influence, and when that was decided, absolutely. And was there sure. Corruption or whatever you want to say behind that? Absolutely. The dollars pushed it that way. But I also think there was some naivete, right? There hadn't been consumption of those products for a large period of time. They didn't even know what the results were going to be. We're living that now.
Yeah. So let's just put it out there being like, here are our recommendations when we have no freaking clue, highly processed, ultra processed grains that you can't really digest. That's horrible for you. Let's just eat 8 to 11 servings of that a day. And then animal consumption, that is, and some of the fats, you talk about McDonald's. McDonald's fries used to be so healthy. It was 3 ingredients.
Tallow, yeah. Potato, salt, and tallow, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I want to validate a few things,
sure.
Because a lot of people are just like, first of all, like you brought to a point of, are people even going to hold credibility? You're just trying to sell a product. And that's why you're promoting these things. I always qualify, we could rent out this whole ranch. I'm fortunate enough, I'm 5th generation on this ranch. We homesteaded in 1882. So we're owner operators. A lot of guys are just operators. And there's a tricky thing in agriculture. There are high barriers to entry right now. Astronomical costs. You almost got to be born into it. You're not going to come out of high school or college and say, you know what, I want to be in debt for the rest of my life. This is a great business plan. Right. You got to be careful about agriculture.
Yeah,
it's a challenge. But I'm still hopeful for the future. The point I'm trying to make is we could be better off financially renting the whole place off.
Yeah, sell it or rent it. Absolutely.
Rent it, or you tear it all up. We're close enough to a population. We could just develop this full property. So that's why I want to say we're passionate enough about our future, the way that we want to better the land for the next generation, to better we propagate wildlife. We plant a 26 variety cover crop. I'll just tell you about this operation. We started with 160 acres. That was our homestead back in 1882. I'm fortunate enough that we've grown this ranch to 20,000 acres. And by doing so, and when I say we've grown it that much, we've had family farmers and ranchers sell to us at lower rates than what other operations would buy it for. That's a testament.
Because they want you in. Is that what you mean?
They knew that we weren't going to tear it up.
Yeah.
that we're actually going to take care of it. We're not going to break it up and say, all right, here's a 40 here, here's 160 there, and start ripping it all up. No. We're going to keep it all together and keep it into grasslands. The majority of this ranch, over 75% of it, is grasslands, never been turned over. This is the way the land was when the bison roamed this area. So that is extremely important to us. It's one of our key founding principles of this ranch is to keep it the way it is and turn it over in better condition to the next generation.
But you mentioned something as you talk about this, like keeping this business viable in the long term. And I think, certainly I'm third generation, you're fourth. We're thinking generationally. We have to think long term. Fifth.
I'm fifth.
Fifth.
That's all right.
As we look at so I have a project that we farm, and they came to us, and it's an investor group. Okay. It's a lot of acres, and they were like, hey, you got to manage your erosion. We want you to do this. We want you to do that. We want you to do all these things. And it was good, right? Their intentions were good, but at the end of the day, what really mattered to them was the dollars, right?
Yeah,
and
unfortunate.
The challenge here is for you to do the right thing, but create and generate enough profit to be able to do what you need to do. Because as you have competitors come in and with outside money that want to invest in the land, okay? They're not investing in the land usually because they want to improve the soil health or they want to better the environment. Yeah. They're there because they want to make money. And you and we have to compete with those guys. And so I think a lot of what you talk about with regenerative agriculture, with restoring the grasslands, with doing all of this stuff, the place from where I sit, from where I see things, I'm like, how do I do this? Because there's so many things being asked of us, either by consumers or by the government, or just us thinking generationally, the things that we need to do, things that we believe in. But how do we do that and financially execute well enough to continue on? Because either you liquidate or you make the margin that you have to, or you I guess go back. You're a consolidator or you're consolidatee. You're either growing your business, your ranch is going to get bigger, has no choice, or it's going to get smaller. My farm, our family operation, the same thing. We either get bigger or we get smaller. There's no staying the same.
Right. No, I would 100% agree with that. Now, for us, we've gotten bigger and we've diversified. And so some people think we're crazy. And so these are the type of things where we're upcycling different products or companies.
What does that mean, by the way? What does that mean? For the people listen to this, you're upcycling. What does that mean?
Well, let me just tell you the businesses that we have on here first, because right through these doors, there's a brewery. These are 14-foot doors. Inside there is a brewery. Why the hell would you have a brewery on a ranch? I don't know. But it's actually taking local products. We use 2-track malting. Well, okay, let me get back. So we run cattle, we run bison. Okay, that's just the basics right there. We've been running livestock ever since we started. Now from there, if we hadn't diversified, I'd still be hopefully I went to Arizona State, so hopefully I would have been graduated by then, but or by now. Even though I might have liked to stay in Arizona State, it was kind of a fun college. Different topic. Then I got into corporate America, moved to Texas, and so corporate America was great. It took my kind of blinders and really broadened them out. So I came back 2008. My older brother had diversified the operation. We got into wildlife hunting. Okay, we had an asset sitting on this ranch. It was an easy barrier to entry, and back then it was okay. We can make a little bit of money, and we point you over into that pasture or that field, and the resource was there. So that's great. But it can only last for so long. You can't just overhunt. And so we had to start planting cover crops and wildlife utopias out there to really propagate the wildlife. And so that's been tremendous. When I came back, then we started, or we continued, remodeling these old ranch houses. They were sitting stagnant over the summer, but rented out during the fall. Then we got into corporate events, got into weddings. Then the brewery came about in 2018. And then we do direct to consumer proteins, beef and bison, and it does pair well with our beer. So that's kind of the thought process behind the brewery. But we have spent grain. And so when I talk about upcycling, getting back to your question, we took a product that was just being thrown out that is gut friendly. It's good for your health, for animals, pet treats, and human consumption. So right now we are starting to upcycle this company and using a product that's just being thrown out to hopefully do good and to actually help our bottom line.
Right. And that's, I mean, you have to do those things, but I guess I find within our organization, and that's the only thing I can compare it to is like my own knowledge, right? What you're doing and what we're doing.
Sure.
And the more you do, the more you have to manage, the more, the idea is that you're more profitable, but then, you've got to manage. I guess the new projects that we take on, it's a steep learning curve, right? You didn't, when you put that brewery behind you it cost you, your tuition was really expensive is my guess, because the projects that I've done in a similar fashion have been incredibly expensive. It just is so hard to learn how to do. It's like any startup.
That's one thing. I mean, but it got us outside our comfort zone. If we were just maintaining, when you start maintaining a business, you start going downhill. And so don't maintain anything. Always try to improve. And this is where I challenge anybody. And not that I'm trying to be on this soapbox and pat ourselves on the back or anything. Just try and be a better person, a better, community representative. I mean, if you can really provide instead of take, and that's the greatest generation back in World War II. Oh my God, I will never get over it. It's what can I do for my country? And today's generation is, I was born in this country. What can this country do for me now? And I think that is such horseshit.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. I mean, the way we've changed our mentality, right, over generations is scary. I will say, getting into politics for a second, going back to that, like seeing what happened, a week ago, roughly, made me have a little bit of hope. Because I hope, like, it's the same thing you just said. We, as a government, not just as a people, so on your ranch, you've got to improve each day. You can't take the practices, the things that you did or that your grandparents did, you can't keep doing the same thing as them. Now, in some cases, you should do the same thing, but sometimes technology, capabilities, knowledge, you name it, changes, and you need to adapt and adopt and make those changes and stop doing things the same way. And if we could, as a country, as a people, as a government, have the mentality that we have to do that, the same thing that you and I have to do to stay in business, we would live in a lot better place. And I just hope that we have had I don't know, I'm just so optimistic to see what can happen, especially, and I'm giving a lot of this credit to RFK. I mean, there's plenty of other people to give credit to, but the idea that you have, an environmentalist, okay, Sierra Club guy, that is part of a conservative administration is pretty mind-blowing if you think about it. It's pretty innovative. It's pretty new. It's pretty, it's going to alter the future, and I hope that it alters it in the right way. That's all I'm saying.
So you talk about RFK. So when you talk about these uncomfortable things, the biggest change that is going to happen, you need a platform. You have to educate the public. Or at least bring awareness. I don't, whether you learn from it or not, just be aware. And so RFK is actually bringing that platform. These podcasts, I commend you for doing them. We just need the platform. Now, whether we hit, certain demographics, certain populations, great. But we just need to tell the story. And that's the biggest challenge with agriculture is that we haven't told the story. We haven't been allowed the luxury of having a platform. So the fact that we're able to communicate, to be on a level playing ground of the mass media, because that's really what, you just type into Google's going to send you whatever they want. I mean, they're going to dictate, okay, you're searching onions. Well, let me tell you what I want, what information do I want you to see? And that's what's happening. And that's a very scary thing. Technology is great, but we have to be very cautious going into it. Same thing with rural America. I am ultra rural. I love rural. It's what built North Dakota. And so sometimes we've lost our identity in North Dakota. We do have some challenges there. Agriculture is our foundation. I get it. We're making $1 billion and plus on energy and all that. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that because we are a profitable state. But our spending is out of control here in this state. That's where I'm from. I mean, we're just spending $1 billion more than than our neighbors in South Dakota. That's sad. Let's tighten up a little bit. But getting back, yes, I'm excited. I'm optimistic. RFK being in whatever capacity he's going to serve our country, and Trump, that is where I'm most optimistic about. Our health is about to change for the good.
Yeah, and I think it's the timing is right. I mean, obviously that's why they're in office or will be in office, but it's been incredible to see. And you talked about it. You alluded to this before. I think COVID changed people's understanding and really the importance. They saw for the first time the importance of where their food comes from and how it impacts their health and what their decisions mean with regards to what they consume. And that's the thing about all of this. I got to say, like, the reason we consume. Now, I'm not saying there's not big pushes behind the scenes for, with when you look at all the grains that we consume in the United States. You talked about your Doritos, for example, right? I mean, that happens because number one, I think is cheap. But why is it cheap? Yeah. It's cheap because of the subsidies and the support and the policies that support those industries. And while, all of us are in the business to make a profit. So that's what we're doing. But we have to have a path to sustainability, to longevity, to generational businesses. And the way to do that is through profit. But how does the government change to increase that? I don't know. I mean, I think there's going to be, if we had this conversation a year from today, I think it would be very different. I mean, I think that obviously the basics and the truths don't change, but our understanding of where the country and where the people are going would be different. And I hope that we continue to go in that direction and want to improve our health, want to improve what we eat, what we consume. I mean, I look at I guess you're growing protein, beef, bison, and I'm sitting over here as a produce guy. Whether it's asparagus or watermelon or onions, right? It's kind of in the same vein. Sure. Like if the more we could eat that way, the better off we would be. And there's no doubt about it. Like we would be healthier, but it's not the cheapest. What you sell, what I sell is not the cheapest thing in the grocery store. And that, as long as that's the situation, as long as that's the case, we will continue to be unhealthy as a country.
Well, so the next, what I'm excited about is the economy being profitable, just from a family standpoint, your own family being able to make more money, the groceries be less expensive. And that's, you talk about inflation and what has happened the previous 4 years on what should happen now, the next 4 years. Then you can be able to afford, and because what is the cost of your family's health? Okay. Do you want to, and get rid of big pharma and all that shit that you're seeing out there? These companies should not be able to dictate lifelong chronic diseases that are happening and say, you know what, this child, if we don't have them as a patient for the rest of their life, we're not making money. That is the wrong answer. Let's get them healthy immediately. Give them good food, the basics, the nourishment that they need, so that we don't keep them in the medical system. That's where we need to start. And that's what I see RFK and Trump doing the next 4 to hopefully and beyond.
Yeah. So, I appreciate what you've said here. And I hope that the people that are listening also hear the genuine voice and concern that you have for the future, for our health. I think we generally speaking, that's what I want. That's what you want. And if people, and that goes back to us speaking to the consumer. So often we're not raising our voice, and as farmers in general, farmers and ranchers, we just sit back and kind of let things happen around us, and let people form opinions and make decisions, and let the media do what they do, and we don't stand up for ourselves. And we cannot continue to do that. And people obviously are hungry, and pun intended, they're hungry for what we produce. And it's really up to us, all of us, to make the time to put in the effort so that they know how much we really care. And that you're as a 5th generation guy, you're thinking about the next generation. You're thinking generations ahead. So am I. Let's just figure out how to do it together and have the American people behind us so that we are, 5 generations further down the road, we're still here and we're healthier than we were, the previous generations. Jay, really
I think it's gonna
appreciate you.
The more you talk, Shay, I just want to mention this real quick. Your logo, you got this halo over you, and so I feel like I've been enlightened now by you. So I appreciate that. I love the logo, which is positioned perfectly behind behind you.
Yeah, I guess we got it just right. I appreciate you being on. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the commentary. It was great being in North Dakota. You live in a wonderful place. I except for the winters, I think I would be happy to be there.
That's baby making time. And
there you go.
Journey.
There you go. So. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. There's a reason for it. Everything's got a season. Yep, absolutely.
That's right.
Well, thanks guys for listening into the Produce Common Sense podcast. We love to have guests like Jay on and to hear their perspective. Common sense in everything that we do is critical. And when it comes to, growing produce or to raising bison and beef cattle, we have to do things the right way for the right reasons. And I hope that you've learned a little bit here. You understand a little bit more how a rancher thinks, and especially a rancher like Jay. You understand a little bit more about me and the way I think and how both of us are thinking generationally. If you've learned something, if you've liked something, and if you appreciate what you've heard today, give us a like, give us a follow, and give us a share so more people can learn more about where their food comes from and what it takes to get it on your table. We'll catch you next time.